ʻājeetguxeex tlekatjuan. Ya akquan kat akquan. Hakutau dagan yayagi. Onyaki sakshawaya he ʻājeetguxeex weqagan. Atweheqwasaku. Wasa kukwanugu aya xosatin. Audagani. Atchagut ka Ḳaajeetguxeex aqawe qoyawdahai Ḳaajeetguxeex ja ʻātangi. Ya ʻini jini hastu tuasagu. Ye awe tutan. You do a sago at tutan. Ya tlekaqinaqo hope. Ye awe ye cut tuchatan. Ya ye dat tlekaqinaq. I'm hoping for you all. Ye awa adatu tuchtatan wash yat yach. Ye awa ach tuasagu llatin itu yeti. Ye awa hatuasagu tsu. Llatin awa yeti. Anak haskau dekid awa hashil kohas. Ye awa ajawe yeti. Ǩaajeetguxeex aya atxeleyech ha'anaka. Aqallatin itudeyekakwati. Iyuqatangi kekuxlatin so. Qash ijunitin aya. Hastuqede qajisaach. Yaltakat yuan. Yewa adatu takhwatan. Yayagi. Hastu tlilkohas anikak ya aqquan. Qat aququan. Yewa ach. Atiyanach aya yechat wuti. Hastu ani. Xosatin aya hoita. Anach ya andaganya. Ḳaajeetguxeex hastu hitki aye wutiyen. Ach hasa kausagani qoa. Kallushkeye Wasa ishandain has kaushishu. Wegao. Aqawe hastu hiti akach aya ye has outleyech. Dechwaji kallushkeye at aya ya hastu hitki. Ajawe. We kash tu ani at aya akach has outleyech. Yewe qoa ʻājeetguxeex awe yuhan tlitsini tuye tiach tuasagu yisaku. Ajawe kagachtu aq. Qa awe kagachtu aq. Wegao. Kleidahin aya weqa. Kiks at the qawu owa. Qone aya dark day wutlitsis aya hastu yago. Dukelki has aya shukawa ja. Yende aya yi achayi. Yende yi tzaq yi atchayi. Yende yi tzaq yi achayi. Hasakawa aqoy tikden hasawa chayi. Qushtech wasa hasakawa aqo adakde haswutlitsis. Ye awe diyuqatangidat tu detanyayagi. Aqaqajguk. Adeyuq ewatani ye ya tlatzin den. Ye awa adatu tukhwatan yayagi. Grilchi shuhan wasayi tuuch wasayi yati. Dusadu tuasagu yuq ewatani. Guk.
Hatsu achtuye audiganyagi khwasatini kunnach.
Tlingit.
Yawa.
Gwall atlein hastu yejine naqhaswu at. Aqajas gan kaya ataswu ati. Etwasa oti. wasaqawshaqutl aya tlakatritlatki hahitida Ahortative Portives ye awa we nadai hin awa khwach yaigi do you ʼatángi da dawe tuchtatan kehinak gwash ye nadai hin kache kanadain gwash qutl gwash lleo gwash llwch ayi ayektie ti ka atug gwash we hin gwash we itch isha ejiwo ʼatángi ye awa ye kaqisatin llwch hin ye awa Lingít tundatani llwch hin yachya tidutu kahit aya kaatawu tlekakwati achawe aan ye awa haqusti wan qaninsa aan yudu asak just at ayat dinuk qanakhawe tutan qanakhawe just at ilqain aqa awe kwashya hin tayeye wuti llakat we lleo qalluk yinde yeka kwati kataqu hin yudu asago at yadu we nadai hin ya Ḳaajeetguxeex khankai kataqu hin yudu asago at ye awa kataqu hin yakhnaqati ituwu ye awa akhkak ye awa qa ajoyach tuasaku adat aya yututukhla atki ya yitat Jishi de kakwanik le qaqinach shukwa Ḥaajeetguxeex Lingít ʼatángi. Okay. Well, I'll translate a bit of that, and then we'll see, just sort of maybe see if folks have any questions. Let me try this thing. Okay. So a couple things. It was sun shining today, so that was nice. I kind of didn't know what to do because it hasn't sunshine in a long time. And so I went out. I had a film project I had to do for some folks. I was running around shooting some films, and I had to film myself talking. And I was trying to think, they wanted a message of hope. So Tutan is the name for hope. And so there's some different ways you can change some verbs. And sometimes we'll look at some examples maybe next week or maybe right now. I don't know. If you change the preverb, you change the meaning of the verb. And there's a few of them that have lots of options. Yeah, I can. And so so one of them is tutan, which so tan is a root, just like yu-ḳatunk and yu-tutunk. So you have tan in there as a verb root. And so we hear this a lot. This is for like yu-tu-ḳatunk, I'm thinking, and yu-ḳatunk, I'm talking. I always forget to drop the U when it moves around. Like, you should really drop the U when it goes future or perfective. But anyway, I was talking today, and then I was thinking about some things and about how just I want people to feel strong and have strength inside them. And that was like just trying to think of this message. It was like, Dear Indigenous Peoples was kind of the prompt. It's this indigenous organization that wants a group of people to record a message. And so I was sitting there trying to think of things to say. But you all have strength because our ancestors, they'd say, ʼatángi, which literally means they all left and left it behind. but it's figurative speech, and so it means, oh, sheesh.
Maybe it doesn't want you to speak literally.
Yeah, right. So literally, it means they all left and left some. Did it do it again?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. We'll see. I'm trying some new settings. Maybe it's too high. The definition's too high. I don't know. But anak has eat. So anak, and then nak. So nak is one of these directional terms, and it means to just walk away and leave some, or to leave something behind, right? And so you could say you left your keys here. You walked off and left your keys here. And so this is in that song, Tu He De Shugach Tutan. And they say, Anak Haskau Dek Eid. And so there's other ways that we would use that nak word. Like I could say, Ach nak yikud. I could say that too. You left them, and you left me here. You left me behind. And sometimes we'll say to people, Hech I nak gach te art. We're not going to leave you behind. We'll just wait for you. And so you have strength in your possession because our ancestors left it here for us. And that was one thing that they did. And then I was thinking, when you use the language out on the land, then you start to put that strength inside of your own self. And I think that your language gets stronger because in your dreams you're going to hear certain things, and then you'll be able to repeat them. And then I was thinking, then we started talking about it being sunshiny, and I said maybe it was sun shining and everybody just left their work behind and went outside and walked around, which is fun. And then I could see Douglas where I was filming today. I was over by, on the way to Thane, I guess. And I was thinking about that place, and then thinking about how those houses were burned down and the village was burned down and people just built their own houses on top of it. And maybe those houses are weak now. Maybe there's something wrong with them because they did that. But then I was trying to get back to this message of hope. And so like coming back to it, just thinking about courage and trying to do the right thing and trying to keep going and trying to keep learning, keep using the language. And then there was this river that was running, and it got me thinking about John Martin, who one time shared this phrase with us, and I'll type that in. And it means, let your spirit be like still water. But I got to explain it here. Let me type it. So this is, there's an underline under that G. I don't know if it shows up. So naqati, there should be an underline right under that G. I think it disappears in the chat sometimes. Yeah, it's gone. And so anyways, if water that's running fast, if you just sort of scooped it up into a clear bucket, you would see all these sediments in there. Maybe some tleo is sand, and is mud, and tlug is silt or murkiness, or in some cases it's some kind of liquid that males produce and it makes a baby. But if you just sort of if you just scooped water right out of a river, you'd see a whole bunch of stuff like moving around in it. But if you had this clear, like if you had like a glass bucket or something, I don't know, and you just set it there and you just let it be still, then all that water all those sediments would go to the bottom. And that's what we call ʼatángi. It's a water that has settled to clearness. And there's a river up in the Mendenhall Valley, which is called Ḳaajeetguxeex, which means it runs itself clear. And then next to that is Ḥaajeetguxeex, which is the bigger river. I guess the first one they call Montana Creek. even though it's not in Montana. And then the second one they call Mendenhall River, even though it's not Mendenhall. So Ḳaajeetguxeex and Ḥaajeetguxeex as the names of those two rivers. And so ʼatángi is let your spirit be like water that has calmed itself into clearness. And it's really important because when they say like ʼatángi is a command form for like hurry yourself. And if you hurry yourself, there's a related word from that verb root, which is ʼatawut, which is war or trouble or chaos. And then also, I was thinking about a similar concept, just like when things move too fast, they get out of control. And so it seems like what we're told through the language is meditation is good. An is the word for meditation, or to like just sit and watch the weather or the stars. And it's good to just sort of do that now and then, and to just sort of let everything settle. Because they say, it said his thoughts were like murky water, and that's what they said about Ḳaajeetguxeex, the leader in Sitka, before he decided to go start wiping them out with his gang. Is that like the murky thoughts are pretty dangerous, and so those are just some things I wanted to share as we start class, and then I'll see if anybody has any thoughts, things to share, or questions.
Wasa duasak we Mendenhall River, Tlingit.
Wooch ich uhin. I'll put that in the chat.
What did you say meditate was? On?
It's Ḥaajeetguxeex. Is that the first one?
Ḥaajeetguxeex, yeah, the first one. And you can say like Ḥaajeetguxeex, my firstborn, the firstborn child. So Ḥaajeetguxeex is just like the first. Ḥaajeetguxeex is a related term, and it means the original, or like at the beginning, at the origin. Indigenous peoples is Xuqatqu.
Oh, that's right.
So that is it just means people out in front, people ahead of it. And so it's interesting because I get asked to translate stuff a lot, and like the thoughts come from English, so they'll say like the future is female. I'm like, oh, that's great, but I like, okay, in Tlingit, like you'd probably have to say tomorrow or something, because shuka would really be like in the future, because you could say yanashe oe shukate would do a tea would do the tea night, no, yanashe kashukate would do a teen hayukatangi teen. I think that's something like that an elder told me. He said people can see way out in the future through our language. And when he was telling me about that, I was like, ooh, like a crystal ball or something. But then when he started talking about it, he said, we were always thinking of our grandchildren and how we're going to prepare a place for them. And that's why you look into the future through our language. And it was really neat. So shukut is a really interesting term, because like hashuka is usually our ancestors, and hashuka ahas is also our ancestors. For some speakers in Tuslan, that's what they use for elders. And so the ancestors are in front of you because they're the ones that you're supposed to follow them. Like that's the logic in the language. So you'd say, well, Shkate, she said it, she'd say, we're starting to follow them. And then John Martin, he said that too. He said, they already prepared that place for us where we're going to walk. And Anya Shahash, Sam Johnston, he said it as well. He said, he had a really cool verb. I'm going to find it over the weekend. I think it was Ďaxueex, like a or Ďaxueex. Yeah, that might be it. The place where they cleared the trail for us. It's like they were just chopping everything down. So Ďaxueex is to chop stuff down to clear a trail. So lots of metaphors, but lots of things to think about, like whether time is forward or backwards. And I don't think it's as simple as that. And in Tlingit, you like your ancestors, they go ahead of you. And shuka means ahead, but it could also, like, to explore this term shuka a little bit more, it could be physically in front. Like if we're in a boat and there's a porpoise like sort of cresting in front of us, I like to do that sometimes. You could say we yak shukach yanas ein. They are yasnas ein, that should be it. They are that's how they swim, is going like that. But it's in front of the boat. So the shukah is in there. Yak shukah is in front of the boat. But it could also mean ahead of someone in terms of time. So I could say, like if we were having some kind of pizza eating contest, and we had this one piece of pizza, and we just want to see who could eat it the fastest for whatever reason. And if you won, I could say, ha, ach shukat yanyecha. You ate it before I did. Or you could say you got there before I did. Ach shukat atigut. You arrived there before I did. And so it could be before something, but it's in front, and that's where our ancestors end up going. And then I've heard it in other terms too, but mostly it was my great grandpa, and he was speaking English. I'd have to listen to the Tlingit, but he said, like, some people try to get ahead of us, and that means they're trying to put themselves in front of you sometimes. So it's interesting. Other thoughts, questions?
Ḥaajeetguxeex. Goose day. But that is, where is someone going? And I wanted to ask where he is.
Guxsa.
Gusa.
Oh.
And I think everybody can see. The most famous man in America today.
Ťaajeetguxeex.
I wrote them in every time.
Good.
Yeah, well. Good. Yeah, so we can look at that too, like to ask where something is. It kind of, that's the one that does want there to be a suffix on there. So you're usually going to say gusu, and that's just where is it. But the only answer to gusu has to end with so it can only be yadu, wadu, heidu, yudu, nechu, shkunu, but it's got to have that on it. Awu, and it also can't have a verb. So you can't have gusu and then have some sort of like, where are they eating, where are they walking? It doesn't work. It's just a straight like gusu eat. Where's your son? And then there's a type of answer. Shkunu, at school. Nechu, at home. Yadu, right here. But then the other ones, and so this is the suffix, and it's a directional suffix. There's a set of them. Maybe we'll take a look at them. It's been a little while. Maybe I'll just pull them up since it's on the brain.
Rabbi Káageetguxeex ʼatángi ʼatángi like Káajeetguxeex Bernie.
Yeah, way. It's the Burning Man.
Oh,
All right, where'd they go? Maybe it's not this one. Oh, here they are. Okay. So, so if you have, we'll just add it here. In front of here, you have this question particle, gu, right? And I was talking with Jeff Lear about this. He had some really cool thoughts on what comes next. So the first part is gu, and this starts to ask a question, basically. But it could also be a statement. So it's interesting how they work. And then you have sa. And sa is, yeah, I was saying a lot of it was related to this body part here. And I think there is a relationship there, but it's actually a command form of the verb uwasa, which is to name something. Like you could say, Ye'awachat uwasa. That's how they named me. Ḳ'une. If I was telling the story about how I got the name Ḳ'une. Or if somebody came up with a name for something, like Nakashanawe uwasa. So Nakashan named it. So he came up with a name for a thumbtack or glue or whatever. So that's what the sa is doing. And it just kind of combines with these question particles, which we'll look at that next. Okay, but just sticking with the gu part. So it wants to have a suffix here. So I would actually write this as like that, just saying like, don't forget to put something on there. There are times I've heard gu sa, but I think for most speakers that comes out sounding a little bit incomplete. So what they want is, if you say gu dach sa, where did it come from, right? And so if I give you some gift or I give you like a sandwich, gu dach sa, and I'll tell you where that sandwich came from. Gu de sa, where is it going, right? Gu de sa yanakut, where's that person going? Hun dakihiti de yanakut, they're going to the store. Gu nachsa, where did it go through or along? That's what you say when somebody sneezes. Where did it come out? Gut sa, which is where did it arrive at? Probably not used as much as the others, but you could say gut sa or gut ka. Where did that guy end up going? Right? We saw someone walking around. We saw Bernie walking around. We're like, where'd Bernie end up going? Ḥaajeetguxeex, he went to my house, right? Then here's the this is the gu su. And it does kind of a weird thing where it jumps over this sa and turns it into su. And so sometimes you just get interesting things with contraction where things will jump over something else. And then guk sa, that works, especially if you put yeyeti. Guk sa yeyeti. That's a really good question for like that picture you showed. Guk sa yeyeti. Then you answer with something yeyeti, to say where someone is. Guk sa, like they're moving around or they keep coming back to this place. And then the other ones don't work because they're not really directional ones. Thoughts, questions? Pretty okay?
ʼAtángi Gusue du tuasa gu place. ʼAtángi, where is your favorite place?
Oh,
How would you say that?
yeah, well, that's an interesting thing. Like, favorites are really tough, I find, in Tlingit, but you could say like, Guk sa ituwasagu ye iti. That's how I would say it. Where do you want to be? Or I guess there's kind of longer ways. Guk sa ituqaditi. Where is it that you feel you feel good being, I guess. Yeah, ʼaajeetguxeex iti. Where do you want to be? Yeah, because like those are some things that I think just aren't necessarily. There's things you say like, where do you want to go? Or I know like in English, these are ways that we get to know people. Like, what's your favorite food and what's your favorite place to go on whatever, you know? And so um, you can ask this, but it's just sort of like, what do you like in Tlingit? And those are really interesting questions. Those would be ones to probably ask a speaker and see what they come up with, like a birth speaker. Because as far as I know, there's just, you just end up with these sort of like, where would you like to go? Or where would you like to be type of thing.
Ḥaajeetguxeex.
Ah, okay. Okay. So let's take a look. We were looking at this stuff the other day, and then we'll look at this for a bit. We'll take a break, come back, and maybe look at parts of another speech from the Because We Cherish You book. So again, just continuing to think about these sets of pronouns, right? This orange one, the subject, that's who's doing it. This blue one, the object, that's who it's happening to. And then the green one is the preverb. Oh, what did I ask you guys to do? Oh, we had people who didn't go yet on Tuesday, right? Let's do that. Does anybody have sentences you wanted to share? We were talking about people who have done things for civil rights, things like that. And then we're just sort of sharing that now.
I could go. I might be a little half-baked on what I'm trying to say, but I decided to change it up like we talked about instead of doing that long speech
Oh,
or letter. Okay, let me share this. Okay, I don't have the high tones or underlines. My computer, I think I have to redo it because every time I try to get it installed, it just keeps on giving me errors. So I'll just read it here out loud. We ganach te di shadahani ye wute clock on dach yechak you do sock do at wuskuwu yechak ha jilkat ani kach kutril gao United States on yek Wells Teichu ye hedu tle ka nask mile Dakun jilkat Dakun jinkat mile we United States on yek dakahidi du han yagi yechak ye jinei aya we usku yechakut klek jilkatini har jiwu yagi we jilkat kwan. Hooch.
okay.
You want me to interpret what I was going for?
Let's start with any response. If anybody has any responses. So just so that we can get into the habit, I think what I'd like us to do is to work on some themes every week. And if you drift off the theme, that's totally fine. It's just the theme is more of a suggestion than an assigned topic. But if you can, like, let's try and start getting into this pattern. So, like, if you have the opportunity, it is helpful for you to write it and show it to us as you're saying it or reading it. And then what I would like us to do is to try and respond to what you're saying. And I'm thinking sometimes it'll be me responding, but it'd be great if other people Just say something, because what we're trying to practice is get ourselves conversing. And conversing is a challenging thing to do, I think, in Tlingit. But just to sort of take what someone says and then to give your thoughts on in regard, and even if it's a little bit sort of kind of veering off a little bit. So like if this is talking about kind of defending Tla'quan, then I might have a different thought about someone who did that in some other place. Or it might spark this other idea. But the goal is by the end of the semester, we're just taking turns starting a conversation. And then that conversation is going to just go. And we're going to try to do it all in Tlingit. So if we can use, for when we're trying to stay in Tlingit, which will be kind of the beginnings of class, I think is maybe how we should do it. I know I wrote in the syllabus like we'd go lessons, then full immersion, but we'll see how everybody feels. I think we should try and start every class by just staying in Tlingit. But the chat is your safety zone, so you can type in English, like if you could say, I'm not really sure what we're talking about. And then if you know while the conversation is going, feel free to help them out. Or what was this word? I heard this word. And we might not always get to your questions right away because we're trying to stay in the conversation. But then when we also come back into English, then you could, then we can review and you can say, oh yeah, I had this question. But use the chat for taking notes, like things that question you want to ask when it's over. And also maybe someone, if you see something pop up in the chat that you think you can answer, then go for it and just help us stay together and into these things. Yukeka.
Gunashchish Kluk Klukwan Ya Naksakwain.
Oh, Yuke.
Jeez.
Yeah, wow.
Little jeez.
Nah.
Yukecha. Ţilxaatqwan. Wasa Tlitsin Dane. Witlakikak Aya. Haswudnak. Ye awa achtu Yuke dat. One qanins. Ya hasi tuasa gulta katwe an hasa watau. Akhu awekhu. Tlitsin. Ka akakaya yan hasa wadil. Hasti dachkan kisani kagiyis. Ye awe tlitsin hastu tuye wuti ka tlitsin yi tuye yiti dat yukecha. Akaka kwashi we border tlaidihin kakshahit ke yishi qidach ayacho ach akatchatse wak ach yidat kwa.
Let's see. On yake.
Ye awe. Yuke kunchish.
Lekok Hinok Aqua we text box text cook.
Cook. Iti ako disa dito asaku. Ide ko hai. And so just so that we're clear, sometimes I'll say iti ako or itch ko and that's just saying like who is next. So iti is in the remains of it, and then itch is the one that follows it. So whenever you hear me say one of those, I'm usually trying to encourage someone to go ahead and go next. So I'll put those.
I always use adu sadeh.
Oh yeah, that's another one. Adu sadech or adu itzakuaha. I'll put all those in there.
I just jotted some things down throughout the last class. You kind of did the homework a little bit, but Let's see. Civil rights, Shada Honey. Elizabeth Paratovich, you do a sog. Kach Gashat, you do sagen. Lukach Adi Yebuti. ANS Ye Jehune or Yejene.
Mm-hmm.
Ka William Paul Sr. you do a sog. Shquindi, you do sagen. T Hitan Yebuti. A and B Yejene. Ḳaajeetguxeex. Not sure. Ḥaajeetguxeex ayawadlak achoe stuga chetati. Jeez.
Wow. Okay.
Katsu stuga khatati where shkandi ka kul art do ye jene ka gonna choose shkandi ka kul art adat ha ik kayeni ginak okay.
Okay. Ye owa chatsu kachashat. Ye played the hina we ka. Ye o ka. Gut ye hasayo saka. Atusawe yuhan. Ituasagu. Hachuche iti. Uhan aya Cajun taos and talk aya civilization haji uti. Ye owe one kanins. A day. Yusre watani ye. Shishkedain aya. Yusre watan one kanins. Ye has uji tachanach ayanach yake. Hasuti. Ye awe hastu tundatani ye uti. Just like ka aya kunach yake. Just the cut hasko a tlet ka yach hasuti. Tlet has ushke. Kunachawe tletlach to ushku wait a yach kusti away that. Kudzati ko a katundatani. Ye owa wegout so. Wasadu tu shetsin a gate watan. Ye owa kunach shetsin den yu watan hakage yes kachkash art. Kaduchuch kahastu chunkian kahastu kanian. Okay, sheesh. Adu eat sakoha.
I'll go.
Ah.
All right. Oh, I'll try to share my screen. Hold on. So I was sort of like just trying to put things together to see if it made any sense. So I got a little lost on the tenses sometimes. You see that? Martin Luther King Jr. Da you tuatan peace kuka or wait. Guakan kukau duwayesh ʻatángi Nusk jinkat kagu shuk awe du katagu yek e watan shasheki dai ke witlit it du hus au un du una. So I was trying to say, I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. He wished for peace. He was 39 years old. I got mixed up on the tenses. He spoke. He climbed up to the mountaintop. They shot him. He died.
Yeah, well, okay. Tlachonach Litsinoe, a day, a dech Iwatani, yeah. Tlachonach, yeah, owa, Shashakitu, a good, ka, quash, Iquyos, a ka away, the Hanko Hosatin, the Hanko away you do sago at, yeah, like Kakinach, the promised land. Hechosako ko a dasa dat. Gwash ye away to Tundutani. Just wait Jakut Ani. Guksa Wuchach ye Dashlawich at the Katku. Ye away connected to Wasaku. Ya Tatke awa. Ya Ḳaajeetguxeex. Wututlatin. Do ʼatángi, Martin Luther King Jr. We ʼatángi. Huchi kan Ḳaajeet ʼatángi. Ya Ḳaajeetguxeex. Ye Aqsaqa. Hechwasaku yetki. Gwall de awsakuwan. Kukwana. A itchigi awe wudu wajak. Ishan uhan. Ka we kuyaw dahai awe khwashatinsu. MLK FBI. We FBI has to tuwasaku shwita jaki. Ye awe. Khanachawait at the kataya. Ye awsane. Hasakaushahit. We an katishhiti at 10. Ka tape recorded. So. Aka away do shut. Do jeet ach ausawu we hook. Klesh ushke at hasakaushahit da. Ye away do tawasagu we wushas would the shy. Ako at chakucha what the ka. Kuwashi wan kanins. Ye away. Has to tawasagu shwit the jaki. John away tlatzin dain yuke watan. Kunnach away tlatzin dain. Ye awa wukecha gulchish. Ya itat adusa. Gulchish.
Gune MLK ka tuga hasyati activists ya ashu haskut at wultyu Washington du jiwu lasayi jin kuk ach jiwu at wultyu hastu tuch. Was that was sock activists Tlingit Ḥajeetguxeex?
How? Hechwasaku. I do chedachoa we asai. Gwash we activist choa. Wuchiach yedash. Dad yejene. Ye away yechwaji. Tleidchach inach. Working for balance. Equity.
Could you put that in the chat, please? Goodness, Chief.
Ukecha. Ye awa. Atlein tlell has to toa ishku. Kusti. Martin Luther King Jr. Ye awa. Llakudzi at the he. We atchadaki hiti. Ka atwuduzukugo at tlane. Yeah, well, the cut played caught a hatu was a guye tea, the cut wait uchka. Yeah, away in the skijin, a who outlaid ka. What atchadaki hiti tlashatu ashku a ye tea. O hansu Lingít. When Panins a cachawe a caushit. Lingít yag. Kate yag. Yeah, away cachonach ayach uti. Gwall atchadaki hiti. Gwall hundaki hiti. Jadusa du tuasagu a yide wugu de helwasa uti. Ye awa qone aya a gate haswutigit. Wukeqo a kashi tua ashko atchadaki hiti ke haiti uksha. Qoshtiach dasa yi tuasagu hawasa kayishahit. Ach awigach tucha. Khosatin we at yahai. We atcha qone hasi ya de wudu qik. Qone aya hasi yawa gwaltsu. Hasi shed naq e qoa. Qushtiyach. Wasa hasa kawa aq telhastu in qaqach tulgao. Qadu yel aya hatu yeyati. Klidzi, tlach qonach klidzi. Gwall e yabdu gwalli. Itua sagu wan qanins. Has to cut you to goody. Ye awa kayel qoa has to tu ye wuti. A joe hasa yawatlaq. Hasa yawatlaq. Ye awa Rosa Parks. Atlen Wig e kuu. Wuchach yedal. A daye has you ne. Okay. Sheesh. Atu itzako aha. Ya idat. Ach tu ye kei ʼatángi hasa achi.
That
Sheesh.
okay. I need a volunteer to read with me. Frank, please.
I'll play the part.
Okay, so the red text is you, okay? You'll see. So, Ḳaajeetguxeex ʼatángi ʼatángi.
Quaswas wudillasach kuada sa ye giane.
Neil llwacuch.
Cha yach akwe?
Neil llwacuch.
Aga awe dasa ye giane.
Ahortative Portives.
Cha yach akwe?
Ahortative Portives.
Aga awe dasa ye giane.
Allwn llwagut.
Cha yach akwe?
Allwn llwagut. For a man.
Yeah. That's away?
Tlidzi, tlellwasatin.
gana.
Allwn chwagut.
ʼatángi.
Jason Momoa, allwn chwagut. Aquaman, chwasatin. Chwasiku, jikuti.
Ḳaajeetguxeex.
Read the line.
Oh, ʼaajeetguxeex.
Ďakujem. Thank you for volunteering, Frank.
Sorry, I didn't stick to the script. Ḳaajeetguxeex.
Test improv. Ţișiuqu.
Igu aya Juan ʼatángi.
I hope that was inspirational for everyone.
It was.
So, moral of the story, don't stop hunting until you find Aquaman in a lake.
Stop hunting, start fishing.
Asqew. Asqew. You guys get a seine net. Okay. Yata Ahortative Portives.
Oh.
I made this several years ago because aqwa would mean a singular they is going to do something to someone. So it has a third person object and subject and it's in the future. So this was like the nerdiest meme that I could have made. So it's aqwa man. So you just throw the qua on there instead of the aqua. Okay. Oh, sheesh. Yeah, do Aquaman. How Shishuku at away. That was Shishuku at away. Let me put that in there. So Shishuk is to laugh. Atshuk is also, well, Atshuk is to laugh and Wushuk is to laugh. Atshuk is laughing and Awashuk is laughing at something. So Shishuku, and there's an underline on that G, is funny. And then Ḳaajeetguxeex is like saying funny things. Somebody's saying funny things. Yake, sheesh. Tukke kwash wulsa gawu. Ţasaituasaku. Ah.
Nuchdein Chatwune Ach Kegu Yanik Ach Yak Wage Hagu Yanik Yadat Chatwusenech Kach Kadase Chaach. Yeah. Over break, I ended up getting sick with COVID. So I was just trying to explain that in these few sentences.
Ishan. ʻatángi 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 awashat tlellach tua ʻatángi ya yagi we nak achtut aya waduatzak tsik disi awejin kat yagi yakwahi we dech achtuk aya kuch ya kuchtetsak we nak ye awa achu we kuu klekdein adat aya has tu watan dadeti nechsahayati get kleich what sich Yahwati kak aya tuati ushtach aya yotusene ya achtu ya ni kodat tsu shia deheni ku klech yuchatank at has uhin Kushtiach wasa hachuchi tichadasa achtuasaguye kakwati Wan qaninziewe washtan kwan tundatani Ja freedom ye hasaya sakha Kachas awasku kwash adat awe we qada yosadak Ye awa adat yutuchtatan qa ya hanya hayan wadki Achtuasaku hasachuke hawati We ni klein qa hachuye ti tlesheka kwati Atlein hasti tundatani ya ja adusa ya nachlatzin ye kakwasti kushte yachwasa atwudne jakut ku kach kesha yachuti keshas awasku at yawne Chashtakata de yakwahe kutzati achawe chashtakata de jichtuti at yawne ye awe kusachan katisha an Hakusti awe atu dach aya watusaku kusachan katisha an Qashi ideg kakwanik gitlet qaqinach yijiyasaya kakwanik I'm sorry that happened to you. I feel bad. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want anybody to have to suffer through this pandemic. We could call either one of those things. I just wish more people were just responsible. I think a lot of people they think that freedom is I do whatever I want, and it's survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive, and who cares what happens to the rest. But maybe a lot of people just weren't raised with principles. Like we're told everything has a spirit, so we respect everything. But not everybody thinks that way. It makes it hard. It makes it really hard to just live in this world and see people that can just do so much stuff and see it just. There's so many things that we're taught that like this is gonna really get out of control. Then it's really hard to even talk to people about some of this stuff. I got the first shot today for the vaccine. Next shot's on February 10th. I hope everybody has a chance to vaccinate because I'm sad. I'm really sad that we can't go be with our elders. I did have a chance to visit with some the other day, but we had to stand outside. You're asking old people to stand outside. We all got masks on. And there's a way to get beyond this, but it's hard because so many people are just kind of deliberately living in ignorance about how to overcome pandemics. And we talked about this last semester when it was just starting to come among us about what's needed. And so as people are raised without these sort of principles, these values, these things that are, when you live with this language and this culture, you just know, like, it's love and kindness. Those are like such strict principles. And so interesting to me that there's these stereotypes about Tlingit people being so mean when like kindness is like such a core principle. I was in Sitka a couple summers ago and someone said, I didn't realize you guys laugh. I didn't know Tlingit people laughed. And I felt kind of bad because I think this lady had dementia, so maybe like the filter was just gone. But I said, oh no, we laugh all the time. Everybody's taking everything from us, so it wasn't very funny. And so anyways, I hope you're better. I'm glad that you have healed. I care about all of you all, and I want you all to be safe and healthy. And ʼatángi. I guess maybe before we take our break, I thought maybe we'd take a look at this word for a second. Ďakujeeq. Took me a bit of, like as I think about a new dictionary, and there's lots of mistakes in it. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this thing out the door, and there'll be continuous revisions to it. But ďakujeeq, it comes from a verb. It's really interesting that there's a number of compounded things that are in there, but you could see that it's a verb because there's Aquaman sitting right in the middle of it, right? So the Aqua is in there. And as soon as you see Aqua or Kukwa, or there's just these things that are going to signal that's a verb that's in the future, right? But there's a number of different ways to talk about a spirit. So to is kind of an indirect way. So it's emotions, thoughts, feelings, a spirit, and it's one that we attach emotions to sometimes. Ďakujeeq is the living spirit that's inside of everything. So it's inside of a rock, it's inside of a dog, it's inside of the fish, it's inside of us. This is the thing that carries on when things die. So something does happen, and so there's room for all kinds of beliefs, and including multiple things from multiple places. So I'm not trying to displace anybody's current sets of beliefs, but that's what ďakujeeq is, and this is the one that they'll use when they say ʼatángi at ʼaḥortative. There's a spirit in everything. Because of that, we give respect to everything. And so it's a pretty fundamental concept in Tlingit. Then there's also yeik. And yeik is the spirit of something that stays around to help the icht, or to help people, but it was usually the icht. And then, yeah, I think maybe we'll just leave it at that. There's also ʼqāni, which is related to ʼqān, but it specifically means when you're addressing non-human things or encountering non-human things as if they are human. So there are specific ways to talk to things, like you could talk to a tree before you cut it down, and you would say, ʼasqāni, and now you're talking to the tree people. You could talk to the bears before you go in the woods, and some people would say ḥaajeetguxeex, just our ancestors. Other people will say ḥutzqāni, ʼachtqāni. So everything has a ʼqāni, and sometimes when people would be taken by animals, that see them take their fur off and stuff, and they would look just like people, and that's ʼqāni as well. So it's complicated, interrelated concepts. That
ďakujeeq. I've heard that used before. So there's no usage of it as referring to a spirit that is present, not to help, maybe to help, but not directly, just present.
Yeah, that's it's still something I'm figuring out. Like my thought on it is ʼatángi is what's in the current things, things that are
Hmm.
alive, things that are here, and when they're gone, like some people will go to ʼtángi, they'll go to this. Uh, what did Martin Luther King he call it the promised land? And I was really curious about that. Like I was curious about so much with Martin Luther King. Like, did he know he was going to get shot the next? Did he know he was going to die the next day? When you listen to that, really listen to that speech, it sure feels like it sometimes. But then also, when he's talking about the promised land, is he talking about like, well, once we leave here, it's better, or is it this place that we think we can make? It's so interesting, but Yake is usually that spirit that comes back or remains to help people. Um, but just to be honest, the Yake is a concept that probably gets rejected a lot by Christianity. Christianity probably has sometimes, not everybody who's Christian, but there have been times and there still are times where a concept like ʼatángi and Yake are rejected and are seen as evil. And people used to be a lot more bold with coming right out and saying it. I don't think they say it as much. But when you start talking about like the trees having a spirit and stuff, that kind of goes against the beliefs of some other people. Um, I try to teach this stuff just in terms of like what the language shows you. Uh, Feel free to absorb what you want, but there's no sermon here, unlike the ʼatángi. But this is how it works in Tlingit. It's probably something that I'm always interested in learning about and figuring out. And there's lots of elders who they live with multiple belief systems that don't conflict inside them, because people can be reincarnated as well. So they come back. They're going to come back, and it doesn't happen for everybody, but it certainly does happen. There's stories about a 5-year-old kid who is named after somebody who's gone, and they're on the boat and they're going by the place where that person they're named after used to fish all the time. And that 5-year-old goes, "That's where I used to fish," and nobody told him about it. And so like those types of stories do exist, but not everybody is reincarnated, and not everybody stays around as a Yake. But it's something worth sort of examining and looking at. That's fun stuff to talk about. Okay, let's take a 8-minute break, and then we'll come back and see what folks want to do. So I guess maybe about let's just take 10 minutes. Let's take whatever time it is now. Come back in 10 minutes, and we'll keep going. Sheesh. How many minutes was that? I lost track. Okay, what do you folks feel like working on? Give you some options. We got the speeches from Ḥaajeetguxeex. We could look at that. We could finish the verbs, sort of going through the subjects and the objects. We could look at that.
Can I make requests
Quest
of
list.
those subjects?
You want to do that one?
Which one?
Which one?
ʼatángi, Ḳaajeetguxeex.
Ooh. Okay, so we'll do a bit of a crawl through this speech. We'll do similar to how we've been doing it before. So someone can volunteer to read, and then we'll look at the English, and then we'll come back and just point out things that you think are interesting or that you have questions about. So this is Ḳaajeetguxeex. Tlingit, 1972. So the way I'll zoom in on this. Oops, what happened? Okay. And so read one sentence. So you'll start here and you go up until you see the ending period. Who wants to go first?
Yadukat. Ahortative excuse me. On Ātatani Ahortative.
Okay. Ahortative Portives. So here's the translation. I would like to speak to my older brothers. Coming back, anything you want to point out or ask about?
Yeah, that on Ātatani, that refer. I'd like to get a better understanding of that word itself.
Okay. Let me pull up the...
Ātatani.
So let's take a look here at the verb database. And we're going to go look at ton, because that's the verb root. And so here there's a whole mess of them. So we thinking, I think there's actually several different roots here, but it's debatable. So like, I think the washing over it or for the ocean to get rough is its own. I think the carrying hollow objects is a different one. The bending is a different one. Habit being the habit of might be a different one. But anyway, so we're going to go and look for, and anyways, we're looking at this one. So there's several different ones for speaking, right? Talking, communicating. But when he says ʼanqadatani, the N in there is what signals this. So we kind of talked the last class about how to look at these themes and what they tell us. And one is that, so here's the ʼa part, That's what we call thematic prefix, and it means mouth. S, capital S, is the subject, so that means that's where the subject marker goes, that list of subject pronouns. Ḳ, t, I, y, unmarked, hus plus unmarked, or d. Those are your options, right? And then this D means it's in the zero group, but it's plus D, so it's going to be d or da. And then ton, that's the verb root. Na means the conjugation type. So when we go down, we see a command form, ʼanidatan. You're commanding somebody, speak. Ḥaajeetguxeex. Don't speak. Just like the No Doubt song. That's how you would translate that one. I am speaking, ʼanachdatan. So here's the ya plus the na. That's just part of the what we call progressive imperfective. It's in the process of happening right now. Ḳaajeetguxeex, I spoke. And so this isn't like speaking to or speaking about. This is just like I spoke. All right? Didn't speak. Will. So here's ḳaqwa, ḳaqi, and guxta. We're going to look at futures at some point, and you're going to start to recognize the shape of them in terms of when it's me, when it's you, when it's this third person. So now we're getting close here. Untitled. So this one is let me speak. So this is what we call a hortative. Hortatives are used for like, let this thing happen. Let it be that way. Like that Tlingit song, let it be, whisper words of wisdom, right? So those are hortatives. Let it snow, let's go. Those are all hortatives, right? Where you're really, it's kind of a command, but you're saying let it happen. So I would probably, if you were going to get technical about it, I would probably say this could also be translated as I would like to be allowed to speak. So it's one step more complicated, right? So ʼanqaddatan, let me speak. So you could also say that too, like I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're trying to talk, but everybody keeps talking over you, or maybe one person keeps talking over you. ʼanqaddatan, just let me talk now. And so that's something you could say in a situation like that. Or if you see that someone's shy, you know, kind of on the shyer side, and they keep trying to talk, but someone who's just maybe had too much coffee and is just went from coffees to Red Bulls to whatever, and now they're just like won't let anybody talk. So you can say ʼanachdatan. Let them talk. Let them talk. And so then you'll see when you just learning how to use this list of verbs. That's one of the ones that you might sort of look at sometimes. Then you have like speaks every time. So this one and this one, there's na and qa right next to each other. And that's why you get the qa will turn to qa quite regularly. Okay, so you're going to see these combinations. Like when you say nakhtu'at, it will also turn into an underlined X. Nakhtu'at is a na, qa, tu, at. And when they add together, there's just some things that start shifting around. So that's what's going on with that one. There's also really long things like there's no way they could talk. But you'll build yourself up to those ones. Okay?
ʼaajeetguxeex, they are speaking through me every time.
Oh, ʼaajeetguxeex is like it sounds. I keep thinking of it. That's what it sounds like to me.
ʼaajeetguxeex.
Okay. 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 So from here, down to there, who wants to read it?
Stakut ya yanagi yais kach city aware kach tu klekay khatsu ya dat.
Sheesh. Stakut yat yinaki. Ya yis kak sati awa a kach achtuuklike. Chetsu ya yidet. So then we see, yes, all of you standing here, you who are young men, are the ones I too am proud of right now. This could also be young people. Doesn't necessarily have to be just the men. Okay, anything that you wanted to point out or ask about?
I recognize that tu klekay. I feel proud. I could feel.
Yeah, so ach tuuklike, and then you could say something kach. So that means what you're proud of. So this could be, this right here is a possessive pronoun. So I could say, ikach ach tuuklike. I'm proud of you. Yikach ach tuuklike. I'm proud of you all. Dukach ach tuuklike. I'm proud of them. Kakach ach tuuklike. I'm proud of people. Akach ach tuuklike. I'm proud of it. So this is its. So Tlingit does this a lot too. Like if the thing gets too kind of long, you just name it and then you switch this to and it just refers back to what you just talked about.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And anybody, if you got any thoughts or questions, anybody, it's not just whoever read it. Yat Yinaki, the ones who were, you all who were sitting here. I'll point out this one, the ones who are. So this structure right here could also, you could say, ch'ak nach siti the ones who are eagle clan. Yesh nach siti the ones who are raven. Like there's all kinds of things that could go right there. Ḳaajeetguxeex, the ones who are teachers. So that's what that siti. Okay. So just read up to here. I guess we won't turn the page on you. Whoever wants to go next.
Okay.
Ḥaajeetguxeex.
Ḥaajeetguxeex Ḥaajeetguxeex at adade yaqux satagi. Ḥaajeetguxeex at ach ish has yat yanagi.
Ḥaajeetguxeex. Ḥaajeetguxeex at adade yaqux Ḥaajeetguxeex at ach ish has yat yanagi. So we'll look at this. These things that were given to you that you will care for. These at'u of your mother's maternal uncles. You, my fathers, who are standing here. So anything you want to look at or ask about? Well, I would point out the fourth person verb. So you could say ḥaajeetguxeex. It was given to us. So it's just used to take away, like it's not about any particular person. So this one is used for a lot of like cultural things, knowledge, language. Ḥaajeetguxeex, or they'll say ʼatángi. Dastiya said that, like it was made for us. Our language was made for us, and so that it just becomes like it became or it was. Ye jeet would do a t. If it was, you could change this d to t. Yi jit wutu wuti yi ut, the thing that we gave you. And so that's how that would change it. I would also point out this verb, it's got a ya on there, an S classifier, and talk. So you say something da, and then you have an object pronoun, and then yausitak is how you'd say it in the perfective, and that means to take care of something. And it's an important verb. This is the verb that speakers will use to talk about like taking care of our future generations. Like they would use this one. You would also use it to take care of elders. So you would say, hastudat chat yausitak. But this is a case, and it's kind of rare, but in Tlingit you will have object pronouns that are actually a subject. They're actually the ones who are doing it. And it's just one of those things you gotta keep in mind when you start shifting this particular verb around. Kashuk, wasa.
Waduati. Is that similar to the saying ach tu waduaga?
Well, it has that wudua in there. There are some verbs that have like this du frozen in there, and it's not the fourth person. Like you could say ʼatángi, and that means I'm sweaty or I'm hot. But the du is just sort of frozen in there, and in that wuduwaga, it's just this frozen thing that's in there that seems to look exactly like this, but this is the fourth person, just like duwasak. Yeah, good question. Okay, let's get to the next page. Ahortative. So this is the other thing, is you see the use of repetition, right? So like, I'm proud of that. So we see a similar thing, like this long structure and then using to go back to that thing that was just talked about. Okay, here's the next sentence. Who would like to read that?
Dahin ayu dutlak sneak ach ish has.
Chish. Tlingit ayu dutlak yishkalnik ach ish has. So let's see. So my father's, a story is told. They tell about a certain time. And so, well, let's take a look at this. Because as a translator, you've got lots of decisions to make. So sometimes when you go through, we might see that certain things aren't there in the Tlingit side or the English side. So anything that you want to point out or ask about in here?
Do you mind if we see that English side one more time, real quick? Geez.
So the word order gets, so that's something that happens sometimes. So the ach ish has, that's what they start with on the English side, my father's people. So a couple things. So like hus is how you pluralize most kinship terms. Most of them are pluralized with hus. It's quite often that it will lower the tone of this one, but it's not all the time. So ach ish has, ach at has, ach sani has, ach kak has, ach tla has. There's a few of them that are yan. Ach kani yan, ach dachchanki yan. And so, but most of them are has. Dutlak, so this is the same fourth person subject. People are doing it. Tlak is very similar to shkalnik. Shkalnik is like you're just telling stories. Like So somebody's telling a story. Tlak, that's usually talking about like big clan migrations or some legend, some big time classic story, like the Raven stories or something like that. Then it gets into Tlak territory.
Is it kind of like to clock? Is that kind of referring to like you were saying migration stuff like old time story?
Yeah, or anything that like this is why we use this crest.
Hmm.
It's gonna that's a Tlak territory because it's almost like it gets elevated into this bigger category of story.
My brain went from Clay Deheen to Deich Deheen, but I don't believe that's Clay Deheen.
It is. So
Okay.
the can fall out of there, but not all speakers do it that way. So you could say Tlaidihin or Tlaichdihin. And so that's what I think, that you could certainly make the argument that it's Tlay and Dahin, but I don't know. When there's a lot of times where people say Tlaidihin, and they're saying that could be in context one time, like he only had to shoot it once. He shot once and it was gone. But it could also, in the context of starting a sentence or starting a story, could just be one time. So yeah, Dachtihin is twice. Naskadihin is 3 times.
And Clay Dana, Clay Nada, Clay Nadi, Clay Nadi, Clay Nadi. I'm trying to think of the one Raven people. My brain. But doesn't they drop the X there too?
Maybe. Like maybe some speakers like Tlaichdihin. I haven't heard it, but that doesn't mean that people don't say it. So yeah, some of them, yeah. Oh, we're gonna get to that, Ton. Yeah. Well. Okay. Maybe today. Maybe next week. Okay. Next one, right here. Who wants to read that sentence? It's short. Go for it.
Ḳaajeetguxeex.
Okay. Ḥaajeetguxeex. So here's they tell about the sea lion. So anything you want to point out or ask about here?
Well, I'm glad I know Tan and the Yektunik Wushkalnik.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, so you have shkashnik. You've probably heard this verb as a cowardnik, right? So a kaushnik is to tell the story. Shkashnik is telling stories. And then a kawadnik is to tell information. Or to give some sort of news or gossip or information. So like we're gonna keep coming back to some of these things, like Ḥaajeetguxeex is talking. Ḥaajeetguxeex said this thing. Ḥaajeetguxeex said this thing to that person. A kawanik told about it. A kaushanik told the story of it. They are very similar, but like Tlingit categorizes those things differently. Depending on, we're talking about talking, saying like this quotation, like saying these exact words, saying these like that exact words to someone, telling this chunk of information, or telling this chunk of information to someone, or telling a story, right? So like, and those are all categorized kind of differently. So in this case, the other thing that happens is this is katunik, but the ka gets affected by this ye right before it. So that causes contractions, and you get ʼatángi, which it's hard to hear. Like, we're not always writing it how we're hearing it, but we're writing it the way the words are working, just so we can sort of keep them straight and start to figure out how they're being put together. Okay. And next one.
Dudainig ayu kuyau dudlijak.
Okay. Dudainig ayu kuyau dudlijak. Wait. Okay, hold on. Let me catch up here. Oh, that's interesting. So that's... Okay. So let me just match this up a little bit. And let's we're going to take a little look at this verb here. Dudainig. So dain is this area around something, right? So dudainig would be all around him, right? All around the sea lion. And then yao dudle jak. So we're going to look up jak and see if we could find anything under jak. I'm just going to do a little verb search in here. And we'll start with the verb dictionary. And we're going to look in the section for roots. And we're going to go to the J's. Go down to JA. So here is jak, to kill. And this is to kill one thing. If you're killing more than one thing, it's going to switch to een. So, and usually this is the one that I hear most commonly. Ahortative Portives would do a jak. And so Ḥaajeetguxeex would be they killed it. Ḥaajeetguxeex, I killed it. Would do a jak, it was killed. But then we have this L classifier, which is to kill often with no resistance, is what it's saying. But there's a couple things that were on there, if you remember. So it was ḳ, yao, dudli, jak. So there was this ya in the front of it as well. So we're going to go. So this was sort of getting into the deep water. Now we're going to go into the deep, deep water where the halibut lives. So for that, as we sort of start exploring some things, like so we can mess around with the translation a little bit, it's there for us, but to take this deep dive, we start with the verb dictionary, and if we don't find that specific verb in there, we'll try Jeff Lear's verb notes. So these, we probably looked at them a few times before. It's a whole series of just this huge notebook, or these little legal pads, I guess, where he just wrote down the verb roots, all the verb roots, and then wrote down all the verbs within those roots. So it's a really amazing resource. It doesn't really have the sample sentences and other things. It's handwritten. We do have a typed version. What I'll do is I'll put both of these under our class when I update. I had to update the whole website, so I haven't updated particular pages in a while. But we'll go down. So here's J, JA. Open that up. We get JAK for jak, for kill. So here we'll zoom in. We see Ḥaajeetguxeex. So these are mostly presented as third-person perfectives. So there's some things we'll learn how to move that around once we know what it is. Ḥaajeetguxeex, or Ḥaajeetguxeex, killed it with something. Let's see. Then we move to a different, let me check. Sometimes if you look back on the pages before, you'll see it.
I heard one time my uncle Ed Warren talk about somebody had threatened him when he was younger, and the way they did it is say "kachok."
Oh, well, yeah, so there's, what's really interesting is there's this uwajak with a W on the end, and that means to beat somebody up. So there's just like this little tiny difference in sound between beating someone up and killing them. So that particular verb that we were looking at, and let's get back to it, is not in any of the resources that we have. So it's not, it's something that is going to happen when you look at these old speeches, these old stories, is you're going to run into a verb that's not written down. And it means you got to do a little bit of extra information. So the L classifier meant to kill something off and there was no real resistance. The ya is some kind of vertical surface. The q is the object pronoun for people. Ḳaajeetguxeex. And then the subject is also the fourth person. So people killed off people is basically what I'm reading here, which is really, it's like just easily just wiped them out. So when we go over and we look, this sentence is actually a little bit further down. His relatives were all killed off. So people are getting killed off around him. That's how I read that sentence. And so yeah, quite a bit of stuff going on in that particular one. Okay, last one. Somebody read it.
Aga away teach jinach satanin away you are.
Sheesh. Aqa away. Teet jinach satanin away you are. So we go over here and we see this was while they say the waves were rolling. Okay, anything you want to point out or ask about in that?
Well, I'll ask about Jinach Satan and.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so here's another one where the N is popping up and then the Q is popping up. So when those two things, it's like, it's almost like there's a little code, like these little switches, and you put them in a certain order, and that's how you're going to get a certain type of verb. So future, you're going to have qa every single time. Those three little things have to be there. That's why you get certain combinations. In this case, you're getting the conjugation type, so na, you're getting qa, and you're getting also this ne at the end. So what this one is what we call conditional. So when you say teet jinach satane, when the waves are rough, when the waves are really, they'll say rolling, but when the waves are really crashing, when the waves are really, like when I hear this, I'm thinking that the ocean has big waves. That's what we're talking about. There's a lot of chop, there's a lot of swell, it's rough seas. And so, but then there's this N at the end, so it's a little bit sneaky because it's saying, and then when the waves were rough, at that time, when the waves used to be rough, I don't there's this N on there, like what it's saying is it's not like that anymore, right? So again, so what we see here, these are master speakers. They do specific things. They use these really advanced verb forms, but I'll show you what this verb looks like in other in other uses. So we'll go back to here. Oh, we're still in the ton. That's probably right here. So is it down? No. So here is to wash over. This one might not actually be in there. It's for the ocean to be rough. Oh, here it is. So, Ďájinastan. And so this is like, let's say we're out in the boat. Ďájinastan. It's getting rough. Let's go home. Chiusatan. Though it was rough. And so this is rough seas, right? Big seas, big water. Ḳaajeetguxeex. It's going to be rough. We're not going out. We're not going to boat there tomorrow. And then I'll get down to this one. Chinastani. So there's something else that's going on that's adding the qa in there. Huh, okay.
Is he saying that those waves never got that rough ever again, like the way it was that day when he brings the in at the end?
For me, it seems like the N at the end is like, it's something, it's not usual. Because like, there might be spots like, oh yeah, it gets pretty rough. But you know, if we're talking like 10, 20-foot seas, like that's very unusual for where we live. Maybe more on the outer, folks who are out on the outer coast of things. But so that's probably what is like, when it was really, back when it was really rough. And so it could be saying it doesn't get that way anymore, but it could be saying like rougher than usual is what I'm sort of thinking. Okay, well, that's it for time. But if you didn't get a chance to share your sentences, let's push it. You can go first thing on Tuesday, and then those of you, as we think of a next set of sentences for our conversation starters, any suggestions for a theme for next week? Or requests?
Valentine's Day is coming up.
Okay, so let's do flirty, lovey, Valentine's-y things. Yeah, Jason Momoa, like we can all crush on him or whomever. So yeah, and we'll look at some fun phrases. Also heartbreak and things to write your country songs or your blues songs to, just in case. Like not everybody's like, you know, jamming out on Valentine's Day, but sounds fun. Those things go. And so yeah, let's also over the weekend I'll update our webpage so it will include the study group link as well as our class link. And then right now the study gang is meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4:30 to 5:30. If you all want to set up additional times and advertise them to other folks who are studying, we'll reach out to the beginning Tlingit class and the 1-credit Tlingit classes and let them know as well. So just more opportunities just to converse, work together. Okay. Gulchish, Johan.
Goodness, cheese.
Goodness, cheese.
Geez, Shahune.
Okay.
Cheers.